looks like a disaster area. It felt like a Iraq, Baghdad. It's undescribable.
Yeah, hundreds of stories just like that one today across the state of Texas, especially the Dallas-Fort Worth area. A series of violent storms and tornadoes swept through, carving out an incredible path of destruction. That's first on Fox Chicago News here at noon. Good afternoon, I'm Anna DeVlantis in for Patrick and Jan. You could call today the calm after the storm. They're surveying the damage. Massive cleanup efforts are underway, no doubt about that. But for a frightening period of time yesterday, people were scared for their lives as tornadoes peeled roofs off homes and lifted 18-wheelers into the air like footballs. More than a dozen injuries have been reported, but somehow, despite the devastation we're seeing on the ground, no one was killed, no fatalities. They're calling it a miracle. Fox's Adam Housley has the latest from the Lone Star State for us.
A scene of devastation. Folks in Lancaster, a suburb south of Dallas, were hit the hardest by the storm system. The Red Cross says more than 600 homes were damaged by the twisters in Lancaster alone.
It sounded like a train coming through the house and all through the neighborhood. Just like a locomotive, y'all. You can hear just a real roaring noise.
The National Weather Service says as many as a dozen tornadoes touched down in the region, ripping structures to pieces and spreading debris everywhere.
The fact that everybody that woke up in Forney yesterday morning is still alive today in Forney, that's a real blessing. 0 fatalities.
Thousands remain without power, most in the Arlington area, which sits between Dallas and Fort Worth. Utility crews already working to get the homes left standing back online. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport canceled hundreds of flights in and out of the area. More than 100 planes were damaged by hail and have been pulled out of service for inspection and repair. Some 1,400 passengers spent the night in the airport after being stranded by the storm. The wrath of Mother Nature is far from over. April is the peak tornado season in this region, which stretches from March through June. While there are at least 150 injuries, some of those serious, it's remarkable there weren't more casualties from these storms. Residents say what helped them stay away from this kind of debris that flew through the air was the warning system in place. They had 5 to 10 minutes to get into basements, to get into closets, and stay away as best they could from the wrath of these storms. In Arlington, Texas, Adam Housley, Fox News.
Yeah, look at that video. Tornadoes and torrential rains weren't the only problems people had to face in Texas yesterday. Baseball-sized hail. And you could hear it right there as we just played that video for you. Some cases so loud it sounded like gunfire. The hail broke out car windows, damaged roofs, and caused major delays at the airport because of concerns it may have damaged the planes. Damage from that hail alone, not even counting tornadoes, expected to run in the millions of dollars. Meantime, here at home, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin is calling for new, stricter pollution controls this morning. He's suggesting that some of these severe storms are caused by man. Sandra Slarte live near Michigan Avenue, Lakeshore Drive, where the senator just held a news conference outlining his plan. Sandra?
Good afternoon to you, and you're exactly right. Senator Durbin strongly supported today a new report called In the Path of the Storm, released by the Environmental Illinois Research and Education Center, outlining how climate change could lead to extreme weather events becoming more common and severe in the future. The senator says it's time to face reality that 24 out of 25 Illinoisans live in the area hit by recent extreme weather events, and pollutants are harming the world for the next generation. The report highlighted the blizzard of 2011, where 1,500 people were stranded on Lakeshore Drive and caused over $1 billion in damages. Also discussed was last year's spring flood of the Mississippi River, in which the entire town of Cairo, Illinois was evacuated. 7 people died and it caused nearly $9 billion in damages. In 2011 alone, 84 Illinois counties were federally declared weather-related disaster areas. Senator Durbin also emphasized the need to create renewable energy and environmental policies to reduce the carbon pollution caused by the #1 sources, which are cars and trucks, plus coal-fired power plants.
We are either going to dedicate ourselves to a cleaner, more livable planet and accept the initial investment necessary, or we're going to pay a heavier price in terms of the loss of human life, damage, and cost associated with it. My wife and I drive a hybrid car. It costs a little bit more, but we get better mileage than a lot of other cars. I think that was a smart thing to do, and eventually we'll get paid back for making that decision. We've got to start thinking about our kids in terms of the world that they're going to live in.
And he also said it's time to face the fact that it's either your money or your life. Now, Anna, to be fair, of course, fair and balanced, we want to say that, in this news conference, like we say, there's always two sides to every story, but in this news conference, only one side was presented. So I'll say that some people will argue the fact that global warming is a made-up theory used to feed specific agendas. Live at Lakeshore in Michigan, I'm Sandra Solarte, Fox Chicago News.
All right, Sandra, thanks for that report. We appreciate it. I want to ask Tammy Souza about this because I know you've studied this a lot. And what's your take on it when you see the senator making these suggestions?
Well, you know what? First of all, weather is not political. Politics has gotten involved, and you have different entities that have different views, points of view. But he's very right. The weather patterns have changed. Now, you can't pinpoint one event and say, oh, the tornadoes in Dallas, that's it. It's climate change. Climate change is just that. It is change. We had a warm winter this year, a cold one last year. Europe was very cold this year. They were warm the year before. The big picture is that things will generally continue to warm up, and that's what we've seen. And when you get a warmer atmosphere, you get bigger and more devastating events more frequently, and that's the big concern, and that is the pattern we've been seeing over the last decade. So that is what this is all about, dialing back what we put into the atmosphere to try to avoid a warmer atmosphere because, of course, some of these things we put into the atmosphere can cause warming, and that's really the big picture there, and that's what they're talking about, and that's what's been talked about now for the past decade. So now they're just actually putting more emphasis on it and using these events. Let's look quickly, though, at what went on. These are all the storm reports from the Dallas and into Louisiana and parts of Arkansas and Oklahoma yesterday. And we did have an awful lot of activity that took place there. And that's where those tornadoes were, and that's where the big fear is. Now, at this point, those storms have moved well out of the area. They've moved along the Gulf Coast. They're now into Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. Here closer to home, things are very quiet. We are actually looking at very pleasant conditions here in Chicago. We have high pressure that's built in, but we are going to be looking at cooler conditions as well. We're talking about some very chilly nights close to freezing, and we're going to talk about the Cubs home opener, and yes, we'll talk about the Sox down in Texas, their home opener. Of course, your Passover, Good Friday, and Easter forecast. All of that is coming up. Anna?
All right, a lot coming up. Thank you, Tammy. An outspoken Chicago priest has new concerns for his safety right now after an incident at St. Sabina's Church. Investigators with the bomb and arson squad are looking into whether a fire at that church was in fact a direct threat to Father Michael Pfleger. The often controversial outspoken priest spoke to Fox Chicago's Anita Padilla.
Good afternoon. I can tell you that the Chicago Police Department's Bomb and Arson Squad is very interested in that camera right there and the images that it captured. And actually, according to Father Pfleger, they got a picture of the person who did this, and now they're going to try to determine if this is indeed connected to some of the work that he's been doing out in the community. This all happened around 2:15 this morning. Father Pfleger says he was notified by police who knocked at the door, woke him up, and told him that there was a fire underway at the doors of the gymnasium on Racine. Apparently somebody had taken a t-shirt and set it on fire and burned the doors. Now, the damage is very little, but according to Father Pfleger, this is not the first time that this has happened. In fact, it has happened 2 other times, not in terms of a fire, but he says somebody targeted them before, and he thinks it quite possibly could be related to the work that he does out in the community. But he says this time they are definitely kicking it up a notch.
One of the detectives told me he's probably sending a message the 3rd time something like this happened. The 1st time they said a fire. But he said sending a message to you, and it is what it is. I mean, kids are afraid to go to school. There's kids are getting shot and killed. This is nothing. But, they send their message, but we're going to keep sending our message.
This building is right across the street from the 17th Ward offices of Latasha Thomas. And, this morning I was talking with the 21st Ward Alderman Howard Brookins. Of course, this is not his ward, but he said that, he's out of town, but he was shocked to hear about this because he's been working very closely with Father Pfleger because of the problems in his own community. And he said that he is very glad to hear that Father Pfleger is not deterred by this violence, and he plans to come back here, meet with him, and stand with him any work that he does here in the city of Chicago. Again, police are investigating this and trying to determine if this is indeed connected to any of the work that Father Pfleger does in the community, because he is so outspoken. Reporting from St. Sabina, Anita Padilla, Fox Chicago News. Back to you.
All right, Anita, well, that's one church. At another church during this Holy Week, vandals damaged a copper cross. That is in Bridgeport, a Bridgeport church. It happened at St. Mary of Perpetual Help, 32nd and Morgan. The cross, 6 feet tall. It was built in 1895. A parishioner who's also a metal worker says he should be able to repair the damage. Time for You Decide, a sweep for Mitt Romney. 3 straight primary victories last night are propelling him ever closer to the GOP nomination, but his 3 Republican challengers say they're not willing to end their campaigns just yet. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Davis reports for us from Washington.
Mitt Romney is turning his attention to taking on President Obama in the fall, even as his Republican challengers insist they aren't done fighting for their party's support.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
With 3 more wins under his belt, frontrunner Mitt Romney is already looking past the presidential primaries.
Join me in the next step toward that destination of November 6th, when across America we can give a sigh of relief and know that the promise of America has been kept.
With victories in Maryland, D.C., and Wisconsin, Romney adds to his already considerable delegate lead, making it mathematically difficult for Rick Santorum to catch up. But the former Pennsylvania senator is still arguing this game isn't over.
Where it's halftime. Half the delegates in this process have been selected. And who's ready to charge out of the locker room in Pennsylvania for a strong second half?
Pennsylvania's primary is 3 weeks away, and despite the staggering odds, the former senator hopes his home state will give him newfound momentum.
No offense to Rick, who I think has done an extraordinary job of coming from nowhere to be the alternative, but he is not Ronald Reagan.
Ron Paul and Newt Gingrich are still on the campaign trail, but even Gingrich is acknowledging that Romney is likely to be the party's nominee. In Washington, Jennifer Davis, Fox News.
Up next here, the local police chief busted for driving drunk and carrying a gun at the same time. Also, investigators believe they now know what set off the gunman who went on a deadly shooting spree at that Christian school near San Francisco. Plus, one of the Easter Bunny's helpers is busted. Why this fella is hopping his way to jail. Coming up, and one flight attendant never thought her career would take off quite like this. We'll tell you about the special delivery she made at 30,000 feet when we come back.